Hey you, yes you, would you like to know a secret? I wish I knew all of these things about creating GUIs much sooner. Like, this is the first UI I've ever made back in 2018. The donation bar isn't even made by me. Now, this is something that I've made recently and I'll explain how it works later in the video. But if I knew how to make fantastic UIs back then, perhaps I would have been able to start making money much sooner. So my goal is to help you achieve that level of success. If you truly want your skills going to the next level, unlike most people, make sure to join my Discord server. You'll be able to ask me questions about things that you're really confused about. So as you probably know by now, first off, when we're dealing with GUIs, we have to go to Starter GUI and insert a screen GUI in there. And after that, we can put in whatever we want. So first off, we will have a frame. Imagine it as like any ordinary box that you can put anything into. So we're gonna be trying to make a shop GUI right now. So let's start by changing the background color to something more interesting, which would be obviously a darker color of white. Then we can change the background transparency here. Let's go for like 0.3. Also, some borders could look nice. Okay, so we have our main box that everything's gonna be stored into. So let's start by adding some new things. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add a text label, which is also a box if you like, but you can do much more stuff than with a frame. For example, you can change the text, which is the whole purpose of it. So let's call this the shop. So we also have a cool property called TextScaled. If we check it, as you can see, the text becomes bigger. And essentially what it does, it makes the text always fit rather nicely, no matter the size of the box. And there's also a property called TextWrapped, which is sometimes useful if there's a lot of text, let's say. And TextWrapped is, wait, a bit longer. Bro.
2,000 years later.
Okay, now we have it. As you can see, without TextWrapped, it's just weirdly out of the box, and with it, it's inside here. So let's just use this, which is because we need it, and TextWrap is just automatically there. So let's make this look nicer. Okay, this will be nice. So next up we have all of the buttons that do the magic. So let's insert them. There are two types. One is image and one is text. So as you can probably tell, the difference between those is that on one you can change the text and on the other you can change the image. So sometimes you have to decide which would be better to use in the specific situation. So I think this time I will use the image button as a close button and this text button as a buy button. So let's find on the toolbox if there are any cool icons. Okay, this seems nice. So we have that. And to remove the background, we just have to set the transparency to 1. But it won't work for all textures, because sometimes the image will have a background in it, because it's not a PNG. So it might not work for some images. Okay, so, and for the text button, it's really similar to TextLabels, just you can click on them. I suggest you learn color theory or just use websites, but I think that this will be good. Though, actually, I think we'll change the frames border to match this color. Another thing which I really suggest people do is changing the names of these, because when you're gonna have to script, it'll make it much easier and less messier. So let's call this the holder. This will be the close button. This will be the buy button, and this will be the header. This is just self-explanatory. Next up we have images, as in ImageLabels. And then again, it's literally the same as the image button, just you don't click on it and it's just a basic image. So there's not much to it. You can overall just play around with the properties until you learn everything. Make a text label that's gonna be displaying the name of the item. But a really good practice I would suggest is making all of the separate things in a main folder. Like in this situation it would be a different frame, as in that holds everything up. So let's put a frame here and then put everything inside of it, so that we can just pick this thing, the frame, and everything moves with it. And let's say there was another box here, which will be, it will be pretty hard to, well, not hard, but tedious to drag around everything and scale everything to the correct sizes. And let's just make the frame invisible, so it just seems like it's not even there. So next up we have scrolling frames. So let's insert one. Okay, they can be good, but sometimes they're really annoying to say the least, because they just don't work how you want them to. So let's make this look better too, shall we? The unique parts about scrolling frames is that it can be scrolled. So for example, this part looks kind of ugly, I'm not gonna lie. So when we come down to properties, you can see that there's a property called scroll bar thickness, and we're gonna set that to 1. Unfortunately, in this case, if we set it to 1 so it can be slightly seen, the ugly border is still there. So I'd rather just not have anything there at all. And so just, we can see, let's insert the item in here. Okay, there we have it. Let's scale it to something better. That's going to be the holder, just like the frame here. Changing the image color or the background color isn't necessary, because the image will take over. For example, if we change the background color, it won't do anything because this is already a picture. Because as you can see, there is something here. But let's say we removed everything here and it's nothing. Then we can't change it because there is no image now. Oh, and another thing you might ask, how is going to be a button, because as you can see there are no buttons here. So well, basically the fix for this is just insert a text button here, or an image button, doesn't matter. Size it to the whole thing and then just make it disappear. And if you choose the text button, you have to set the text to nothing. So basically just press the space bar and it's gonna disappear. The same if you're gonna be using the image button. Just remove the image by pressing space. For the next two objects I'm gonna use a different UI for a preview, because I just couldn't really incorporate these objects within the shop GUI I made. So this first object would be Textbox. So basically it's kind of like a text button, but when you click on it, it allows you to write stuff into it. So for example, I've made a simple change nickname thing. So when you click on this box, a text box appears, allowing me to write in there. So let's say my name is Joe, and when I click enter, it pops up here. The same goes for here. Let's say my age is 17. I can also change the bio here. And the second object here will be a viewport frame, which you can clearly see here. Basically, a viewport frame is kind of like an image label, but it displays any 3D object in it. So you can display essentially anything you want. For example, here I have this object in here, and the camera spins around it, so it looks like it's spinning. But if you wonder how it's made, it's not really hard, but it's kind of confusing if you're doing it for the first time. So let's say I have a part here. I position my camera here. Then I come to the Explorer and duplicate the camera. That will be, it's kind of like a screenshot, if you will. So I'm gonna rename this camera to block camera. There we go. Then I'm gonna make a viewport frame. It looks like this. Nothing in there quite yet. Then we select the object, which will be this part, but we have to drag it into the viewport frame. Then we can put the current camera to the block camera, and there we can see it. Okay, well, this doesn't look too bad, but let's be honest, it does look kind of bad. So what about we add some rounded edges to all of the objects? I think that would make it look better. So we can do that by typing in here UICorner. So just insert it and it's gonna automatically just add corners. Overall, it doesn't really matter which of these you use, because they're just gonna be rounded. Let's say 15. Okay, that's kind of funny. So yeah, let's just add this to all parts. Here. So as you can see, all of the borders got removed for some reason. Well, I don't really know why it does that, but that's why we have to use UIStroke to get them back. So let's add it in. UIStroke. Okay, as we add it in, you can see that there's a little border here. There we go, and the border is back. So about the other properties here, you can see that there's apply stroke mode here, and there are two options. In this case, it doesn't matter which one you choose, it's gonna be the same. But if you add this to a, let's say, text button or text label, you can change whether it's on the text or the border. So the context is basically meant to be the text. Also, there is a thing called line join mode. There are three options, which just makes the edges look kind of different. But note that UIStroke has to be used with UICorner, otherwise it's not gonna work. As you can see, if there's no UICorner, there's just nothing in there. So use the UICorner. So next up we have a really cool thing called UIGradient. I'ma add this first to the header thing. So when opened, you can see a bunch of different options. So to change the gradient, we have to click on these little dots, because if you press on this color, it's just gonna be one color. So let's press here, and then we have this thing pop up. So make sure either of these triangles are selected, and let's choose a color. Let's try this out. Also, if you want to add more colors, just click on here. Let's say for some reason you want it to be blue. There's an interesting thing, gradient here. You can add more of these if you want, and just drag them around and see what happens. But I'm gonna just use one of these. Then we can change the rotation of how the gradient looks. So let's try, what about this? No. Okay, this looks nice. The offset is basically just how much do you want it to be shifted, but it's not in pixels, it is just in scale. On X it didn't work because the gradient is already moving on the x-axis. I'm gonna just pop something on the screen right now to explain. So I don't need any of those, so I'm gonna just leave it as is. But let's see if it would look nice if it's on the background. The next thing I'm gonna explain is UIPadding. In this case, we don't really need it, but let's say let's gonna add it here. Where it is here. So there are a bunch of different options. Let's say I wanted the text to be a little lower. So let's set this to 10. As you can see, it goes a little lower. The same for this. And this and this. So the text looks much better actually. So that could be a good thing to use when using like the thing called text scaled. So it just not right by the border. And the last thing from the objects that start with UI, we have UIScale. I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea why would anyone use this, but basically it just, there's only one thing that you can do with it. Just let's say you wanted the UI to be 2 times bigger for some reason. You just pop this in and have it. Or you can perhaps make this 2 times smaller. So we're not really gonna be using that here. So now that I have my UI somewhat ready, I wanna see how it would look on other devices. So let's see. Okay, this does not look very good. And you might be having this problem too. So actually it's a really easy fix that you've been waiting for I don't know how long. So let's go to some object here. Let's say to the main frame / holder. Let's go to size and open up these things on the XY, and you will notice that there are two types. One is scale and one is offset. So basically imagine offset is like the size in pixels. It doesn't matter how big the screen is, it will just be fixed in pixels. And scale is just a percentage of the screen. So let's say I wanted the UI to be half of the screen. It would be 50%. So I would have to write here 0.5 because it goes from 0 to 1. And now it's 50% of the screen. The same goes for UI, just on the vertical direction. So let's say I wanted 50% too. I strongly suggest you never use offset again because it just screws up everything. And always set it to 0. And honestly, I have no idea why Roblox doesn't default scale for everyone, and you have to do it manually, so I don't really like that, but it's not too hard to change. So I don't really suggest using these auto scale plugins because sometimes they just do really weird stuff and you're gonna get into bigger problems than just spending a few seconds changing these settings. And especially for the scrolling frames, if you use auto scale plugins or something like that, it's just gonna screw everything up and you're gonna have to remake everything. Speaking from experience, by the way, that was not nice. So just to show you that this works, let's go to test again, open up device, and let's just scroll through here. You will notice that the frame we set to scale is always there, but then we have these children that don't quite fit and they're just bigger, so we're gonna have to just set the size to scale for all of them so they fit. Now that I've scaled everything to the correct sizes using scale not offset, let's see how everything looks now. Overall, it looks much better, though we still have a problem. It looks kinda weird and unaligned. So we have to see and do something with position. So let's say we wanted this right in the middle, then we would have to use 0.5 because it would be the middle. But the problem is that it's not exactly in the middle. It looks in the middle here, but what we actually want isn't in the middle. So what we have to do is change the anchor point. So let's change it to 0.5, and so you can better see, I'll change the Y anchor point also to 0.5. As you can see that the whole object revolves around this little square thing. So let's say we wanted to have the header a bit lower, so let's put it a little lower, like this, you can see it revolves around this point. So in this case we don't actually want the anchor point for y to be 0.5 because it will be kind of unaligned, because as you can see it slightly goes out of the box. So we're gonna set it to 0, and now it fits in perfectly. So now that we've got everything aligned correctly, there's still a problem that the things kind of still look weird. In particular these images, they look vertically stretched. The same goes for this close button. So we can fix that by using a UIAspectRatioConstraint, which always forces it to be a perfect square. If it's 1 in the aspect ratio setting, let's say we wanted it to be 2, and it just makes it 2 times smaller. Overall, you just have to play around with this, because it's sometimes can act weird, but those are the exemptions, because usually, at least in my case, I have always had to use it for making perfect square. And the last on the list for the tips for device scaling is UITextSizeConstraint. So by the name you can probably tell what it is about. So let's open it up, and here we can see the minimal text size and the maximal text size. So what this does is that it's forcing a fixed text size upon the text label, let's say. So for example, let's set this to like 40, and the text got bigger, and the maximal text size, let's have 41. So let's see how this looks on other devices. As you can see, the text size is the same, not depending on the device. Though the only problem with this is that it can come out of bounds and not display all of the text. So use it at your own risk. So now that we have scaled everything correctly, let's come back and finish this shop GUI. So let's go to the scrolling frame, and let's say we want to just have multiple items in here, but now that you can see when I have duplicated it, they just are on top of each other. I mean, we can try just putting them, changing the positions on the y-axis, sure, but there are much more efficient options. For example, UIGridLayout. Now you can see, let's say we wanted simply just a different design and simply an item image with text on the bottom. Then we could just have a bunch of items displayed like this, and it will look pretty nice. With the settings, you can customize it however you want. For example, here it's set to offset again, but I much more prefer just having scale, so it's not so problematic with the UI device scaling. The same for y-axis, if I can manage to get the size right. And cell size could be, let's say, okay, yeah. And on the x-axis it will be 0.4. We could have this type of design, but I would rather have it on one row or column. I mean, we can do it here by making the size like this. Of course you can, but there is a much more efficient option that takes less time. I'm gonna talk about it in a bit, but I'm gonna show you another option, which is UITableLayout, which is literally what it sounds like. It's a literal table. Overall, it functions the same as UIGridLayout, but it's all clustered up and there are no padding, empty spaces around. And it just takes into account all of the children of each item. So it's not just the parent, it's not just the children of the scrolling frame, but it's literally everything inside of the children. Overall, I wouldn't really use this, or I haven't really had the option to. But if you need to use it, no problem. So what I really want to use now is UIListLayout, and as you can see, it automatically arranges these in a list and sizes them correctly. So we just have to change the scaling, the padding. Let's say 0.3. Okay, that looks pretty nice. But I don't like that it's just aligned by the left side. So I will change the horizontal alignment to center. So it's in the center now. But then I don't like that it's just there's a gap above here. So what we can do now is actually use UIPadding and change it slightly. Come to padding top and 0.03, so it's all even now. Let's do the same for the bottom in case. But as you can see, it doesn't work for some reason. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, and it seems it goes out of the box, but we can't scroll down that deep. So the fix for this is you have to guess the canvas size here, like experiment. For me, it was 2.75, so it fills everything. But note that the scrolling frame does not care if the UI padding is in place. So you have to add into account the padding that it does to the canvas size. But a very important thing is to set the automatic canvas size to, let's say, Y. So if we go and see on the other devices, it fits everything perfectly and there are no unplanned gaps here. And if you want to change the size, just select all of these items we have go to size and just change the Y size. Another thing I'd like to show you is Z-index. So let's say we have something like this where one object is over the other, but we want this text label to be above this image label. So where we go is to the properties and find Z-index and change it to a higher number than the other label. As you can see, the higher number, on top, the higher it is above the other object. Though you must note that it only works if between the same children of a single object. So a children of an object cannot be below the base object. So let's say we put this down and take this and say like -100. As you can see, it will not go below the parent object because you just can't do that. The next one isn't really a property or an object, but I would like to make a recommendation about the plugin, which is called Interface Tools. If you're a UI designer or just make UI in general, but you're too lazy to make icons or get them off of Google, you can open up this plugin and just insert any icon you want. Just search for it here. I'ma just show off, let's say, this folder icon. You can use it anywhere, but perhaps you don't want to use it with this object, but you want the image to be on this object. So let's just copy the image here and put it on here. But as you can see, it does not quite look like a folder. So what we have to do, we have to come down to the image here and copy image rect offset and image rect size and put it directly into the new place we want the icon to be. And there we have it in the back. Well, there are other options, just like gradients, patterns, buttons, or you can just upload your own assets. I mean, this is not an ad, but it's a cool plugin. Though the only problem is that it's quite expensive. The time I bought it is like 500. I don't really know how much it's right now, but yeah, I really suggest you cop this one when you can. Another unique property would be ClipsDescendants. So let me show you. So let's go to the main frame. Let's find it here and check the box. As you can see, the close button got like kind of cut off. So let's try with others, and you can see it also cuts off. So what basically this does, it's like a board. It keeps all of its children within the box, so you can only see them inside, but not on the outside. And the last thing I'm gonna talk about today is something called text button Modal, which basically is allows you to go in first person and have the mouse move when you're around the UI. So let me show you. Let's insert a text button here inside of the holder. Let's make it completely invisible. Let's size it as big as the whole GUI. Okay. Then we come down to, oh, we don't come down, we stay up and check the model box here. And now if we go in the first person mode, we can still move around the mouse, which is pretty nice. I hope that you learned something new today, and once again, if you're serious about improving, join my Discord server, like the video, subscribe and comment your thoughts below.